Hello everyone, it's Michael Lazar here, and welcome back to the channel. And in today's video, we are going to be talking about what a tone is and effective ways for learning the tones. Now, a lot of times for beginner chanters, whenever they see things like tone 1, tone 2, and all these random numbers in tone or mode, it's kind of hard to understand what that means. But if you want a proper working definition of what a tone is, here is kind of the broad generalization. A tone is the musical sound of a hymn. Musical sound has a couple different aspects to it. So, in order to understand what a tone is, we have to define these musical aspects and then put them together to get a certain tone. So, what goes into making a tone? You need a scale, you need a bass note, as in a bass note of a scale. You need the cadence points, you need the tempo, and then you need certain musical phrases that define the sound of the tone. So let's start with the scale. There are 4 main scales in Byzantine chant: the diatonic scale, the hard chromatic scale, the soft chromatic scale, and the enharmonic scale. Now, it's important to learn all of 4 of these scales, but there are still smaller scales that are used. You have scale like Cliton, Zygos. You have other scales like Makams, like Hijaz, Khar, or Frios, which is a variation of the enharmonic scale. And there's all these other smaller scales, but the important 4 that you get are the soft chromatic, hard chromatic, diatonic, and enharmonic scales. And I have videos teaching all those scales on my website, learnbyzantinechant.com, and I'll link that in the description. So, the scale is important. The next important aspect is the bass note. Now, the bass note means where you're starting in the scale or where you're going to end. So, for example, if I have the diatonic scale and the bass note is on Pa, so Pa, the way this scale sounds is a lot different than if the bass note is Ni. It will go from sounding like Ni pavuga di kazoni zokadi gavu pani to pavuga di kazoni pani zokadi gavu pa. It has a completely different sound. And historically speaking, at least in Western music, the way they developed the tones was that tone 1 was that scale but starting on D or Pa. Tone 2 was starting on E. Tone 3 on F. Tone 4 on G. And then they had the hypo versions. So like Hypophrygian, for example, would be, I believe, their tone 6, right? This is kind of the Western version of development on the tones. But in Byzantine chant, we have a little bit of a different system, where because we have extra scales, we base the tones on not just the bass note of the diatonic scale, but also different sections of the other scales. So it's important to know both the scale and the bass note. Now, the next part that's important to understand is the tempo. Now, tempo is how fast the syllables change and how fast the beats in the music occur. So, in Byzantine chant, we have a couple tempos which define the genres of the tones. So, a tempo that is at a fast pace and the syllables change every 1 to 2 beats is called yermologic. Then, a tempo that is a little bit slower than yermologic and the syllables change every 2 to 4 beats is stichoraric. Then, a tempo that's slower than stichoraric and has longer passages of syllables that are more than 4 beats in length and is decently slow is papadic. And then, a hymn that is more drawn out than papadic is caliphonic. Now, there are a couple other subgenres in there as well, like slow yermologic or slow stichoraric, which is also called old stichoraric. So the three main ones that you're going to encounter on a daily basis are going to be the Yammerlogic and Synchraric, and if you're serving liturgy, you're going to see Papadic and the Cherubim, and then slow Yammerlogic. So that's four, but the Papadic and Cherubim and maybe the Kinonicon as well are the only times you're going to see it. So those are the genres of each tone, meaning that there's not just tone 1 Yammerlogic, but there's also tone 1 Synchraric, tone 1 Papadic, tone 1 slow Synchraric. You have all these different variations of each tone. So what defines its variation? What defines its variation is the scale you're going to use, the cadence points, and the bass note, as well as the certain musical phrases. So let's talk about cadence points. Cadence points are punctuations in the music. For example, let's stay in tone 1. Tone 1 is the diatonic scale, but starting on Pa, when used in the Synchraric genre. But it's also diatonic on Pa when used in the Yammerlogic genre. So how do you separate them? Well, the Yammerlogic genre has cadence points on Pa and The, while the Synchraric genre has cadence points on Pa and Ra. So it'll sound like this if you're singing tone 1 Yammerlogic. Pa di di ra di ka di di ra di ra vu ra di di, versus tone 1 Synchraric. Pa ra vu pa ni zo ni pa vu ra di ra vu pa pa. So there, you can hear that the actual points in the music switch from bum bum to bum bum, and the actual syllables, or at least the tempo, is going to be a little bit more drawn out. So the final aspect to identifying what a tone is by sound is the certain musical phrases that you'll see in the tone. For example, a very common phrase used in a Synchraric genre will be this: which can also be applied to other versions of Synchraric. So for example, in tone 1, and that cadence, at least structure, is most common in Synchraric genres. And occasionally you might see it in slow Yammerlogic, but it's something that you're going to see usually in that genre of music. So those are going to be the main aspects that apply to figuring out what a tone is, right? Let's do a quick recap. You need to know the scale, the bass note of the scale, the cadence points of the scale. You need to know the tempo, and you need to know the musical phrases. Now the musical phrases element comes with time. The musical phrase is something that you notice throughout music, and that the more you sing, the more you'll be able to understand how music flows and what to listen for. So you'll hear the specific formulas that are used in music. Scales, I recommend that you learn each scale before you try to specify each specific tone, just because learning the scales are going to really help in actually understanding what's going on in music. Then, what I recommend is when you want to learn a tone, find a piece of music that uses it and look at the Western and Byzantine notation and try to see what's going on. See what does the scale sound like, at least played within Western terms. Like if it's a staff notation that you're familiar with, look how it's outlined. Is it like the diatonic scale, but you're starting on Pa? Is it like the hard chromatic scale, where you're starting on Pa as well, with accidentals on E flat and F sharp? And if you're singing Byzantine chant, what are the specific thoras to look for? Or what are the martyrias that are common to this tone? So learning the tones is something that you do one at a time. And it's not really good to try to learn all of them at once, But by learning the scales and taking your time on each one, you should have a decent grasp of the scales after, I'd say, maybe a couple months. Even just listening and getting good sense for them is definitely going to help to increase your musical vocabulary in Byzantine chant. So I hope this video was helpful in trying to understand what a tone is and the aspects that go into defining it. And I hope in the future that we'll be able to do more specific videos on each tone genre so that we're able to cover a much wider range of material. It's kind of hard to explain everything in this video because every tone has so many different genres to it that if I were to sit here explaining every single one just right now, probably would take an hour and a half, 2 hours, and it wouldn't be very in-depth or insightful. So be on the lookout for videos like that in the future. I hope you found the video helpful. If you did, I would greatly appreciate if you liked and subscribed and shared. Other than that, I'll see you on the next one, and have a great day.